Chosen one, listen closely. They sank low enough to try to end your marriage. Not by fighting you face to face, not with an argument you could ever counter directly, but by getting into your partner's ear, one lie at a time, hoping the person who knows you better than anyone would be the one to finally walk out the door. That was the plan. Turn the person closest to you into the exit they could never find any other way. And for a while, it almost worked. Your partner got quiet. Your partner started asking strange questions at strange hours. Your partner started pulling away in ways that made your stomach drop every single night you noticed it. They watched all of this from a distance, arms crossed, convinced this was finally the move that would break you, the one thing you couldn't out-calm, outwait, or outthink your way around. Marriage was the target, because marriage was the softest place to aim. It's the one wall they thought had no reinforcement. And then it went to court. And in that courtroom, in front of a judge who has heard 1,000 manufactured stories dressed up as truth, the entire plan came apart in under an hour. That's where we start today, chosen one. Not with the fear of almost losing what mattered most, but with the moment the people who built that plan sat in a room and watched a judge take it apart piece by piece, in public, using their own paperwork against them. What they thought was their masterpiece became their confession. What they thought was your ending became the day everyone in that room finally saw exactly who they were. Before we go further, if this message is already sitting somewhere in your chest, hit like and subscribe. Not for me, for the mission. Every one of those clicks pushes this message towards someone else who's sitting in a marriage right now, wondering if the whispers around them are real. Consider it your way of paying this forward to the next chosen one who needs to hear exactly this. Now let's go deeper, because what happened in that courtroom didn't start in that courtroom. It started months earlier, in quiet conversations you were never invited to, aimed at the one person they knew could do more damage to you than they ever could on their own. So if you're ready to see exactly how far they went, and exactly how it collapsed on them in front of a judge who wasn't buying a single word of it, drop a 77 in the comments right now. Let me know you're locked in. And if this story is worth something to you, the super thanks button keeps this mission alive so more of these can reach the people who need them next. Let's begin, because here's what makes this story different from the usual quiet vindication. This wasn't a rumor that eventually died down on its own. This wasn't a bad chapter that just faded into the background over time while everyone moved on and stopped talking about it. This was a deliberate attempt to end the most important relationship in your life, built patiently, delivered quietly, and aimed directly at the one person whose doubt could actually do what nothing else had managed to do. And it still failed, publicly, in front of the exact authority whose job it is to separate a real claim from a manufactured one. Keep that in mind as we walk through every single stage of how it happened, chosen one, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why patience beat performance, and why the truth, once it finally gets a fair hearing, rarely loses. Number 1. The whisper that was supposed to end it quietly. They didn't come for you first. They came for the one person who could take you down without them ever having to lift a finger themselves. That was the entire strategy from day one. Why fight someone directly when you can convince the person sleeping next to them that you're the problem? It started small. A comment here, a concerned message there. I just think you should know. I'm only telling you this because I care about you both. I didn't want to say anything, but every sentence was built like a trapdoor, soft on top, empty underneath. They weren't trying to expose anything real, because there was nothing real to expose. They were trying to plant a seed of doubt inside the one relationship that made you feel safe, because safe people are so much harder to break than scared ones. Imagine someone slipping something bitter into a well, one drop at a time, so slowly that nobody notices the water changing until they're already sick from drinking it every day without knowing why. That's what they were doing to your marriage. One drop of doubt at a time, disguised as concern, dressed up as loyalty, delivered with a soft voice and a straight face, so it never once looked like an attack. And here's what made it dangerous. They didn't need your partner to believe everything they said. They only needed your partner to start wondering. Wondering is enough to change how someone looks at you across a dinner table. Wondering is enough to make silence feel like suspicion instead of comfort. They knew that. They counted on it completely. They weren't trying to win an argument with you. They were trying to plant a question that would grow on its own, long after they walked away, acting like they never said a word. That's the coward's version of an attack, chosen one. The kind that never has to answer for itself directly, because it was never delivered to your face in the first place. It travels through a third person, through a trusted friend, through someone who insists they're only telling your partner because they'd want to know if the roles were reversed. It's cruelty, wearing the mask of loyalty, and it only works as long as nobody looks too closely at the mask. This is the part they never expected you to figure out. You weren't watching what they said to you. You were watching what changed inside your own home. The tone that shifted at dinner, the questions that got sharper at midnight, the distance that crept into nights that used to feel effortless. You felt the water changing before you ever understood who was pouring the poison into it. And while they sat back congratulating themselves on how clean the plan looked from the outside, they made one mistake they could never undo. People who whisper for a living always leave a trail, because whispering only works in the dark, and the moment even a sliver of light hits it, the whole performance falls apart in their own handwriting, their own messages, their own voice notes they were so sure nobody would ever hear. They thought quiet meant safe. It never does, and it never did for them. And notice how deliberately they timed it. They didn't whisper when you were both standing right there, calm and unified. They waited for the nights you were exhausted from work, the weeks you were stretched too thin to notice a shift in tone, the stretches of ordinary life where a marriage naturally runs a little quieter than usual because two people are simply tired. They mistook that ordinary quiet for vulnerability, the same way a scavenger mistakes stillness for weakness instead of what it actually is, which is just rest. They picked their moment like someone waiting for a door to be left unlocked instead of trying to pick the lock themselves, because picking a lock takes skill, and they never had any. They only had patience and a willingness to wait for an opening that wasn't even really there, one they eventually had to manufacture out of nothing at all. Number 2, why they went after your partner instead of you. Let's say the part out loud that they'll never admit. They didn't come after your marriage because they were strong. They came after your marriage because they were out of options against you directly. Every time they tried to provoke you, you didn't flinch. Every time they tried to bait a reaction, you gave them silence instead of ammunition, so they changed targets. If they couldn't shake you, they'd shake the ground you were standing on. If they couldn't make you doubt yourself, they'd make the person who loved you start doubting you instead. That's not power, chosen one. That's desperation wearing a calm face. Think about what it actually takes to go after someone's marriage. It takes admitting, even quietly to yourself, that the direct approach failed completely. It takes accepting that you couldn't win a fair fight, so you went looking for a side door instead. Imagine a soldier who can't break through the front gate of a castle, so instead they start digging underneath it in the dark, hoping nobody notices the ground shifting until it's too late. That's exactly what this was. Not confrontation, excavation. Here's what they miscalculated the hardest. They assumed your partner's love for you was shallow enough to be talked out of, that years of trust could be undone with a few well-timed comments and a couple of manufactured stories. They treated your relationship like it was made of paper when it was actually made of something they never bothered to understand, because they never had it themselves. People who build real things don't usually try to burn other people's real things down. Only people who are hollow on the inside go looking for foundations to crack, because watching something solid collapse is the closest thing they'll ever get to feeling powerful. And there's a quieter question sitting underneath all of this that deserves an honest answer. Why does someone spend that much energy trying to unravel a marriage that has nothing to do with their own life? Because your steadiness was a mirror they couldn't stand looking into. Every calm night in your home was a reminder of every chaotic one in theirs. Every time your partner defended you instinctively, it reminded them of every time someone in their own life should have defended them and didn't. Chosen one, that's the tell. That's always the tell. The people most obsessed with destroying what you've built are the ones who've never built anything that lasted. They weren't targeting your partner because your partner was weak. They were targeting your partner because your partner was the only door they thought they could still get through. Every other door, every other attempt, every other angle had already slammed shut in their face. This was the last card in a losing hand, and they played it like it was their trump. Ask yourself why someone who claims to have no real interest in your life would spend this much time studying it closely enough to know exactly which nerve to press. That question alone tells you everything. People with full lives, real friendships, and their own peace don't have the bandwidth to build a campaign against someone else's marriage. It takes hours they never mention, conversations they never admit to having, notes they never intended anyone to find. That kind of effort isn't casual dislike. It's obsession wearing the costume of concern, and obsession always eventually shows its hand, because it can never quite hide how much time it's spending on someone it claims not to care about at all. Chosen one, the amount of energy they poured into trying to break something quiet and steady is, in itself, the loudest confession they never meant to give. Number 3. The lies they built one conversation at a time. A lie this size doesn't get told once. It gets built like a house, one lie load bearing on the next, until it looks sturdy enough to stand on its own. They didn't walk up to your partner and say something wild and obviously false on day one. That would have collapsed instantly. Instead, they started with something small and almost believable, then waited to see if it held. When it held, they added another beam, then another. A half-true story here, a screenshot conveniently missing context there, a tone of voice practiced to sound like reluctant honesty instead of calculated performance. I hate having to tell you this. I only noticed because I care. Ask them yourself and see what they say. Every line was engineered to make your partner feel like the smart one for finally seeing the truth, when really they were just being fed a script, one careful page at a time. Picture a magician building an illusion in slow motion, adding one small distraction after another until the audience is so busy watching the wrong hand that they never notice what's actually happening in plain sight. That's the anatomy of what they did. They didn't need one big lie, they needed a dozen small ones, stacked carefully enough that pulling out any single one wouldn't collapse the whole structure right away. And they were patient about it, which tells you everything about how deliberate this really was. This wasn't a moment of anger that got out of hand. This was a campaign with a timeline. They picked their moments, waiting for the nights you were tired, the weeks you were stretched thin at work, the seasons of life when a marriage naturally has less energy to spare for reassurance. They picked their words, softening every accusation into a concern so it would slide past your partner's guard instead of triggering it. They picked the exact tone that would make your partner feel protected instead of manipulated, because nobody opens the door willingly for someone they can see coming. But here's what they forgot in all their careful construction. Lies built on this many small pieces have this many small seams, and seams are exactly where things eventually come apart. Every fabricated story had a date attached to it somewhere. Every concerned message had a timestamp. Every half-truth had an original truth sitting right next to it, waiting to be found by anyone who finally started asking the right questions instead of just absorbing the story they were handed. A house built this fast, on this little foundation, was never going to survive a real inspection, and eventually, someone was going to inspect it. Think about the specific words they leaned on, because the words always give it away. I only noticed because I care about you both. That single sentence is doing two jobs at once. It's positioning them as the noble one, and it's quietly implying you're the one hiding something worth noticing in the first place. Ask them yourself and see what they say. That line sounds like an invitation to the truth, but it's actually a trap, because it's designed to make your partner walk in already suspicious, reading guilt into whatever honest answer you give, simply because they were primed beforehand to expect one. Manipulation rarely sounds like manipulation while it's happening. It sounds reasonable, caring, even reluctant. That's exactly why it works on people who love deeply enough to want to believe the person delivering the concern actually has good intentions. Number 4. The night your partner almost believed them. This is the part that hurt the most, and it deserves to be said honestly instead of glossed over. There was a night, maybe more than one, when you looked across the room and saw something in your partner's eyes that had never been there before. Hesitation, suspicion, a silence that used to feel like comfort suddenly felt like distance instead. That night wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no slammed door, no ultimatum thrown across the kitchen table. It was quieter than that, and quieter is somehow worse. It was your partner choosing their words more carefully than usual. It was a question that came out sounding more like an accusation than curiosity. It was you, lying awake, wondering how a lie you never even heard directly had managed to travel that far into your own home. Imagine standing in a house you built with your own hands, watching someone else's fingerprints show up on the walls, knowing you didn't put them there, and having no idea yet who did. That's what that night felt like. Not a fight you could win with better arguments, but a fog you had to somehow see through without knowing exactly where it came from. You couldn't defend yourself against something you couldn't even name yet, and that's the cruelest part of a whisper campaign. It doesn't hand you the accusation directly. It only hands you the aftermath. And chosen one, this is the moment they were counting on the most. They wanted this exact night to happen. They wanted your partner distracted, doubtful, and just uncertain enough to start pulling away from you on their own without needing to do anything else themselves. If your partner walked away first, it wouldn't even look like they're doing. It would look like your marriage simply falling apart naturally, and they could stand at a safe distance calling it sad instead of admitting they lit the match. That's how cowards get away with arson. They never touch the flame themselves. They just make sure the right amount of fuel is sitting in the right place at the right time. But here's what they didn't account for. Doubt planted by liars doesn't usually grow in silence forever. It sits there, uncomfortable, itching, until the person carrying it starts looking for proof instead of just accepting the feeling. And the moment your partner started looking for proof instead of just absorbing suspicion, the entire plan started working against the people who built it instead of for them. That single shift, from feeling to fact-checking, is the exact moment their odds started collapsing without them even realizing it yet. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with being doubted by the one person who's supposed to know you best, and chosen one. If you lived through that, it deserves to be acknowledged honestly instead of rushed past for the sake of a satisfying story. That night wasn't just strategy unfolding around you. It was real pain, sitting quietly in your chest while you tried to figure out how to hold a marriage steady without even knowing exactly what it was being weighed against. You didn't have the full picture yet. You just had a feeling that something had shifted, and a determination not to let that feeling turn into panic, because panic was exactly what would have proven their story right in your partner's eyes, even though none of it was true. Number 5. The crack they didn't expect you to notice. From where in the middle of all this, a detail didn't add up, and you caught it. Maybe it was a date that didn't line up with where you actually were that day. Maybe it was a story repeated slightly differently the second time it was told. The way lies always shift a little under pressure, while truth stays exactly the same, no matter how many times you ask about it. Maybe it was simply a tone that felt rehearsed instead of real, the kind of delivery that sounds like someone reciting lines instead of remembering a genuine moment. Whatever it was, chosen one, you noticed. And that single crack changed everything, because once you see one inconsistency in a story that's supposed to be airtight, you stop hearing the story the same way ever again. Imagine looking at a painting you've admired for years, and then one day someone points out that the shadows fall in 2 different directions at once. You can't unsee it after that. Every other part of the painting that used to look convincing suddenly looks suspicious too. That's what happened the moment you spotted that first inconsistency. You didn't explode. You didn't confront anyone loudly. You did something far more dangerous to people who lie for a living. You went quiet, and you started paying attention. You started noticing which details got repeated confidently and which ones got mumbled or avoided. You started noticing who conveniently wasn't around when specific questions came up. You started building your own timeline in your head, one honest fact at a time, the same way they had built their dishonest one, except yours had the advantage of actually being true, and true things are always easier to remember correctly. And here's the part that should terrify anyone who's ever tried something like this. A calm person quietly gathering the truth is infinitely more dangerous than an angry person yelling about it, because anger gets dismissed as emotional, but calm, patient fact-finding gets taken seriously by everyone, including judges. You weren't building a defense out of panic. You were building it out of patience, and patience, chosen one, always outlasts a lie. And here's the part worth remembering the next time doubt gets planted anywhere near your life. Truth has a strange consistency to it that lies simply cannot replicate, no matter how carefully they're rehearsed. Ask a truthful person the same question 5 different times, on 5 different days, and they'll give you the same answer, sometimes word for word, because they're not reconstructing a story, they're just remembering what actually happened. Ask a dishonest person the same question 5 times, and the details shift, the timeline bends, the emphasis moves, depending on who's listening. You didn't need a lawyer or an investigator to notice that gap. You just needed to keep paying attention, quietly, patiently, the same way you always had, and let their own inconsistency do the work that no argument from you ever could have done as convincingly. Number 6. Why your calm made your partner start asking questions. Here's something they never understood about you, and it's the exact thing that ended up saving your marriage. They expected you to panic. Liars almost always expect panic from the person they're targeting, because panic looks like guilt to anyone watching from the outside. If you had gotten defensive, loud, or desperate the moment the whispers reached you, it would have confirmed exactly what they were trying to plant in your partner's mind. Instead, you stayed level. You answered questions honestly instead of anxiously. You didn't beg your partner to believe you, and you didn't attack the people spreading the story either. You just kept being exactly who you had always been, consistent, steady, unbothered by things that weren't true. And chosen one, that consistency is what actually did the damage to their plan, not any big speech, not any dramatic confrontation. Imagine 2 people telling completely different stories about the same event. One of them changes small details, every time they retell it, gets nervous under simple follow-up questions, and avoids direct eye contact when specifics come up. The other one tells the exact same story every single time, calmly, without needing to check their own version for consistency. Which one starts to look more credible over time? Your partner started noticing that gap, not because you pointed it out, but because it was simply there for anyone paying close enough attention. Every time your partner asked you something hard, you answered without flinching. Every time your partner brought up something they'd heard, you addressed it directly, instead of getting defensive or evasive. That kind of steadiness doesn't prove innocence by itself, but it makes people curious enough to look closer, instead of just accepting the easier, more dramatic version of events. There's a quiet truth here worth sitting with. People who lie need you to react quickly, before you've had time to gather yourself, before the details can be checked. Your calm bought time, and time was the one thing their story could never survive. Every extra day it had to hold up under scrutiny was another day for a seam to show. And once your partner started looking closer, instead of just listening to whoever spoke first and loudest, the whole campaign they'd built started losing its grip. Think about how rare that kind of steadiness actually is under real pressure. Most people, when accused of something untrue, either collapse into panic or explode into anger, and both of those reactions hand the accuser exactly what they wanted, a dramatic scene they can point to later as proof of instability. You did neither. You simply kept showing up as yourself, day after day, answer after answer, and let the sheer weight of your own consistency slowly outlast their performance. That's not a small thing, chosen one. That's the kind of discipline most people never develop, and it was the quiet engine underneath everything that happened next. Now, chosen family, before we go further into how this actually unraveled in the open, we just want to say thank you for being here through all of this. If these words are landing somewhere real for you, the super thanks button on your screen helps keep this mission going so it can reach the next person sitting exactly where you were sitting. Every bit of support means more than you know. Now let's keep going, because the next part is where they started losing control of their own story completely. Number 7. The moment your partner started collecting their own receipts. This is the turning point nobody saw coming, least of all the people who thought they had already won. Your partner didn't come to you with an apology first. Your partner came to you with questions, sharper ones, more specific ones, the kind that don't come from doubt anymore, but from someone quietly building their own case. And here's the twist that should make every manipulator's stomach drop. Your partner started doing exactly what they had done to you, except aimed in the opposite direction. Screenshots got saved instead of deleted. Conversations got remembered instead of forgotten. Dates got written down instead of let go. Your partner stopped simply absorbing whatever story got delivered to them and started asking, "Can you prove that? Can you show me exactly when that happened? Who told you this, specifically, and why did they wait this long to bring it up?" Imagine someone who spent months planting seeds of doubt, only to watch the person they were manipulating pick up a shovel and start digging in the same soil, except this time looking for the truth instead of the lie. That's exactly what began happening. Your partner started noticing the same patterns you had already noticed. The story that shifted slightly each time it got told. The convenient timing of certain messages. The way certain people always seemed to appear right when tension was already high, as if arriving specifically to add fuel rather than clarity. And once your partner started asking those questions out loud, in the presence of the people who had been feeding the story, something shifted in the room. The comfortable confidence they'd been operating with started to wobble for the first time. Your partner wasn't choosing you out of blind loyalty at this point. Your partner was choosing the truth, and the truth simply happened to be standing next to you the entire time. That distinction matters, chosen one, because it means what came next wasn't built on forgiveness alone. It was built on evidence, on receipts, on a paper trail that the people who started this whole thing had unknowingly helped create themselves, one careless message at a time. They had spent so much energy making sure their story sounded good that they never once considered what would happen if someone actually started checking it. Your partner also did something else during this stretch that deserves its own mention, because it takes a specific kind of courage. Your partner went back to the very people who had been whispering and asked them, directly, calmly, to repeat their claims to your face instead of behind your back. Watch how fast a story shrinks the moment it's asked to survive a direct conversation instead of a private one. Suddenly, the details got vaguer. Suddenly, the confident tone from before turned into deflection, changing the subject, or insisting it wasn't a big deal, after building it up for weeks as exactly that. A story only survives in the dark. The instant your partner dragged it toward the light, it started shrinking on its own, without you having to say a single word in your own defense. Number 8. The paperwork they pushed your partner to file. Here's where it got serious, and here's where their plan should have worked, at least on paper. Somewhere in the middle of the confusion and doubt they had engineered, your partner did consult a lawyer. Papers did get drafted. A process did begin, because your partner was hurting, confused, and reacting to a version of events that had been carefully curated to look undeniable. And when word of that got back to the people who started all of this, they celebrated. Quietly, privately, but they celebrated, because as far as they were concerned, the plan had worked exactly the way they wanted it to. Imagine a group of people watching a fire they started finally catch, congratulating themselves on their aim, while completely forgetting that fires don't ask permission about who they eventually burn. What they failed to account for was simple, but devastating to their entire scheme. Legal paperwork doesn't run on rumors. It runs on evidence, on specifics, on dates and documentation that can actually hold up when someone official starts asking hard questions instead of accepting a dramatic story at face value. And your partner, now quietly building their own case instead of simply reacting emotionally, started requesting exactly that kind of specificity from the very people who had started this whole thing. Suddenly, the stories that sounded so convincing in hushed, private conversations needed to hold up in a much more formal setting. Suddenly, I just heard, and someone told me, and I think I remember, weren't going to be enough anymore. A private living room conversation forgives vagueness. A legal process does not. They had built a narrative that worked perfectly in whispers and completely fell apart the moment it needed to survive daylight, dates, and documentation. They thought the paperwork was their victory lap. It was actually the moment their story was finally forced to prove itself, and stories built entirely out of manipulation almost never survive that kind of pressure intact. The very step they thought would seal your fate became the exact mechanism that started unsealing their lies instead. Before the main hearing ever arrived, there was a preliminary meeting, the kind meant to see if things could be resolved without a full courtroom process at all. Even there, the cracks were already visible. A mediator asked simple, neutral questions, and the story that had sounded so devastating in private conversations suddenly needed to be repeated calmly, in front of a stranger whose only job was to look for consistency. It relied on emotion where it needed facts, and emotion alone doesn't hold up well in a room built specifically to separate feeling from evidence. That early meeting should have been a warning to them. Instead, they walked away from it still confident, still certain the bigger stage would work in their favor, completely misreading the fact that the story had already started cracking in the smaller room first. Number 9. The courtroom they thought would finish you. Picture the day itself. They walked in with a kind of confidence that only comes from believing you've already won before anything has even started. They had rehearsed their version of events. They had convinced themselves that once this reached an official setting, it would simply confirm everything they'd already spent months whispering. They expected you to look anxious, defensive, cornered. They expected your partner to sit far away from you, visibly upset, visibly convinced. What they did not expect was the atmosphere they actually walked into. You weren't panicked. Your partner wasn't sitting on their side of the room anymore, emotionally or literally. Imagine spending months building an entire performance for an audience, only to walk into the theater and realize the audience already knows the ending, and it's not the one you rehearsed. That's the energy that met them the moment they stepped through those doors. They had built their entire case on the assumption that nobody would ever look closely enough to catch the seams. But someone had looked closely. Someone had spent weeks quietly gathering exactly the kind of specifics that turn a dramatic accusation into an actual, provable claim, or, in their case, exactly the kind of specifics that expose a dramatic accusation as an unprovable one. They sat down at that table still smiling, still confident, completely unaware that the ground beneath their entire narrative had already shifted before the judge had even walked in. Confidence built on a lie always looks the same right before it collapses, calm on the surface and hollow just beneath it. Look around that room for a second, chosen one, and notice who else was sitting in it. Not just you, not just your partner, not just the people who started all of this, but a court reporter documenting every single word, an official process that doesn't care how good anyone's tone sounds, and a judge whose entire career has been built on separating performance from fact. This wasn't the private living room where a soft voice and a sympathetic expression could carry a story all the way to the finish line. This was a room built specifically to strip stories down to only what could actually be proven. They walked in still performing for an audience that had already stopped watching the show and started reviewing the paperwork instead. Number 10. The judge who wasn't buying a word of it. This is the part chosen ones wait their whole story to hear, and it deserves to be told exactly the way it happened. A judge who has sat through more manufactured stories than most people will ever witness in a lifetime does not need long to spot a script being read out loud, instead of a truth being told plainly. The questions started simple enough: dates, specifics, sources, and almost immediately, the story that had sounded so airtight in private conversations started developing cracks in real time, in public, under direct scrutiny. Where did you hear this exactly? Do you have that message, or are you recalling it from memory? Why is this detail different from what was stated earlier? Imagine a wall that looks solid from a distance, until someone taps it, and it turns out to be nothing but a thin, hollow shell. That's what happened to their story the moment it had to answer direct, specific, official questions, instead of just landing emotionally in a private conversation. The judge wasn't interested in how convincing they sounded. The judge was interested in whether any of it could actually be verified. And verification was the one thing their entire plan had never been built to survive. Every vague answer added another crack. Every "I believe" instead of "I know" added another. Every contradiction between what was said originally and what was being said now, under oath, in front of someone whose entire job is separating performance from fact, added weight to a scale that was tipping further away from them with every single question. And here's something worth remembering, chosen one, long after this particular story ends. A courtroom doesn't reward whoever tells the most emotional story. It rewards whoever tells the most consistent one. They had spent months perfecting the emotional delivery and none of the underlying structure, and in front of someone trained to separate the two, that imbalance became impossible to hide. At one point, the judge simply asked them to walk through the timeline again, slowly, from the very beginning. It sounds like such a small request, It's actually one of the most effective questions anyone can ask a person who's lying, because a rehearsed story is built to be told once, dramatically, not reconstructed piece by piece under patient follow-up. The pauses got longer. The details started contradicting the version given only minutes earlier. Somewhere in that slow, careful retelling, the confident performance they walked in with quietly turned into something closer to guessing, and everyone in that room, including the person they had spent months manipulating, could hear the difference. Number 11. The evidence that flipped the whole room. This is the moment everything changed completely, and it happened faster than anyone in that room expected. The receipts your partner had quietly gathered, the timestamps, the messages, the pattern that had been building for weeks, all of it came forward at exactly the right time. Suddenly, it wasn't your word against theirs anymore. It was documentation against a story that had never been built to survive documentation in the first place. Imagine a courtroom as a stage where two very different scripts are being performed at the same time, and then suddenly one performer pulls out something the other never expected, something real, something dated, something that can't be argued away with a soft tone and a sympathetic expression. That's exactly what happened. The messages that showed exactly when certain concerns had actually started, well before anything they claimed had allegedly happened. The inconsistencies between what had been said privately and what was now being claimed publicly. The pattern of timing that lined up a little too perfectly with moments of tension they themselves had helped create. It didn't need to be loud or dramatic to land hard. It just needed to be true, time-stamped, and undeniable, sitting right there on paper for anyone in that room to review for themselves. Sometimes the most powerful thing in a room isn't a raised voice. It's a single printed page, laid flat on a table, that says something nobody can argue with. And the moment that evidence was laid out clearly, the entire emotional performance they had built collapsed. Because performances only work when nobody's checking the facts behind them. And now, finally, someone was. What made it worse for them was how ordinary the proof actually was. It wasn't some dramatic secret recording or a shocking confession pulled out at the last second. It was mundane, a message sent on a specific day, contradicting a claim about that same day, a timestamp that placed a witnessed event at a time when the people involved weren't even in the same city. Small, unglamorous, undeniable facts, the kind that don't need clever interpretation because they only say one thing. That's usually how the truth shows up in the end, chosen one, not as a thunderclap, but as a quiet, boring detail that simply refuses to fit their story, no matter how many times they try to explain it away. Number 12. The humiliation nobody saw coming. There's a specific kind of silence that fills a room when someone realizes, in real time, in public, that their entire story is falling apart in front of the one person whose opinion actually determines the outcome. That silence filled that courtroom. The confidence they walked in with was gone. The rehearsed answers stopped coming smoothly. The story that had sounded so convincing in private conversations now sounded exactly like what it was, a performance with no evidence behind it, being picked apart question by question in front of everyone who mattered. Imagine watching someone build an elaborate stage set, painted to look exactly like a real building from a distance, only for someone to walk up and lean on it, and watch the entire thing wobble and nearly fall over because it was never solid to begin with. That's what happened to their credibility in that room. The judge didn't need to raise their voice. The judge simply asked for proof, over and over, calmly, patiently, and let the absence of proof do all the damage on its own. And chosen one, that's usually how real accountability arrives. Not with shouting, not with revenge. Just with someone in a position of authority asking simple, direct questions until the truth has nowhere left to hide. They walked into that room expecting to watch your marriage end. They walked out of it having their own credibility questioned instead, in front of a partner who now saw exactly what they had actually been dealing with the entire time. The people who once whispered so confidently outside your door were, for the first time, made to answer for every word inside one. Watch what happens to people like this the moment the room stops believing them. The confident posture disappears first, then the eye contact goes. Then the answers get shorter, clipped, defensive, nothing like the smooth, rehearsed delivery from earlier in the day. It's almost uncomfortable to witness, not because you feel sorry for them, but because it's such a stark before and after, proof of exactly how much of their entire presentation had been performance rather than substance. They came in ready to watch your world fall apart. They left having to sit with the very specific, very public discomfort of everyone in that room, quietly recalculating everything they'd previously said about you and your marriage. Number 13. Why your marriage came out stronger, not weaker. Here's the part that matters most. Chosen one, more than any courtroom moment, more than any exposed lie. What survived this wasn't just a legal outcome, it was trust, rebuilt on something far sturdier than it had been before. Your partner didn't just come back to you out of guilt for almost believing a fabricated story. Your partner came back having personally witnessed exactly how far people were willing to go to manufacture a version of events that fit their own agenda. That kind of clarity doesn't fade quickly. Imagine a bridge that gets tested under pressure it was never designed for, and instead of collapsing, it holds, and everyone who crosses it afterward trusts it more, not less, because now they've actually seen what it can survive. That's what happened between you and your partner. The version of your relationship that exists now isn't naive anymore. It isn't easily shaken by whispers or manufactured concern, because it has already been tested by exactly that, and it held. Your partner learned something in that process that no amount of reassurance from you alone could have ever taught as clearly, that the people spreading doubt about your marriage were never actually protecting anyone. They were only ever protecting their own agenda, dressed up as concern. And once your partner saw that clearly, with evidence, in a room where lying under pressure has real consequences, the doubt didn't just disappear. It turned into a kind of certainty that's honestly harder to shake than it was before any of this ever started. There's something worth naming here plainly, for anyone listening who's currently standing where you once stood. A marriage that survives an attack like this doesn't come out unscathed, and it shouldn't pretend to. But it does come out clearer, because both people inside it now know exactly what it can withstand, and exactly who was never on their side to begin with. There's a particular kind of conversation that happens after something like this, usually quiet, usually late at night, where two people finally say out loud everything they were too afraid or too proud to say during the worst of it. Your partner naming exactly how convincing the lies felt in the moment, you naming exactly how frightening the silence felt on the other side of it. Neither of you needing to perform strength for the other anymore, because you'd both just watched strength get proven in the one place that actually tests it. That conversation, more than any ruling handed down by a judge, is usually what actually repairs a marriage. The courtroom exposed the lie. That late-night honesty is what rebuilt the trust. Number 14, the final verdict, their character, exposed. In the end, this was never really about a piece of paper or a ruling in a courtroom. It was about who each person actually turned out to be once the pressure got real and the stakes stopped being theoretical. You turned out to be exactly who you always were, calm under pressure, honest when it mattered, steady, even while someone was quietly trying to dismantle the most important relationship in your life. Your partner turned out to be someone capable of doubt, yes, but also someone capable of chasing truth instead of comfort, once the truth actually became available to chase. And the people who built this entire plan, they turned out to be exactly what patient observation always eventually reveals. People so consumed with tearing something real apart that they never once considered what would happen to their own credibility when the tearing didn't work. Imagine spending months constructing an elaborate lie, only to watch it collapse in a single afternoon, in front of witnesses, in front of a judge, in front of the very person you were trying to manipulate the most. That's not just a failed plan, that's a permanent mark on how everyone in that room will remember them from now on. Word travels fast after a moment like that. The version of them that walked confidently into that building is not the version anyone remembers walking out of it. And that, chosen one, is its own kind of consequence. One that doesn't need you to say a single word about it, because the room already saw it happen with its own eyes. Meanwhile, your marriage is still standing, tested, stronger, and finally free of a doubt that had no business living inside it in the first place. They sank as low as they were capable of sinking, and the floor they were hoping to break through held anyway, because it was never as fragile as they assumed. It was just quiet until it needed to speak. Word of what happened in that courtroom doesn't stay contained to the four walls it happened in. People talk. Details travel, especially the kind that involve a public unraveling in front of an official whose entire authority rests on separating fact from performance. The people who tried to end your marriage now carry that story with them into every room they walk into next, whether they ever mention it out loud or not. Because the people who were there remember exactly what they saw. That's not revenge you had to orchestrate. That's simply the natural cost of building an entire plan on something that was never true to begin with, and having it fall apart in the one setting specifically designed to find out. So here's where we land, chosen one. They didn't just fail to end your marriage. They handed a judge and your own partner a front row seat to exactly who they really are. No revenge was needed from you. No dramatic confrontation. No public call-out. No chasing anyone down for an apology they were never going to give sincerely anyway. The truth did what it always eventually does when you give it enough room and enough patience. It showed up, time-stamped, documented, and impossible to argue with. What they meant to destroy is still standing, and what they meant to hide about themselves is now exactly what everyone in that room remembers most. This is what patience actually buys you in the end, not a louder voice, not a bigger stage, just a moment where the truth finally has nowhere left to hide and no one left to convince, because it's already standing right there in front of everyone, plainly, on its own. And if you're sitting somewhere right now, carrying a version of this same fear, wondering if the whispers around your own life will ever get loud enough to reach the people you love most, let this be the reminder you needed today. You don't have to fight every lie the moment it's told. You don't have to defend yourself in every room you're not even standing in. Stay consistent. Stay honest. Let the people who love you ask their questions and answer them without flinching, because the truth doesn't need you to raise your voice on its behalf. It just needs enough time and enough patience to finally be heard by the people who were always going to check the facts eventually. That's exactly what happened here, and it's exactly what tends to happen for anyone willing to wait it out instead of matching chaos with chaos. If this story landed somewhere real in you, drop a 77 in the comments and let the next chosen one scrolling past see that this happened and that it ended exactly the way the truth always intends to end things, quietly, completely, and in your favor. And if you want to help this reach someone who needs it tonight, the super thanks button keeps this mission moving forward. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and goodbye.